Hello, my friend, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Alexandra. I'm a professional fashion designer, pattern cutter, and creative consultant who is here to help you design, draft, create, and most importantly, wear your dream wardrobe. I am really excited to bring you to today's video. I'm going to be teaching you how to visually communicate and render sheeny, shiny fabrics, whether that is satin, whether that is luminous silks, whether that is iridescent, and whether to some capacity that is leather as well. Tips shared in this video are going to be really beneficial for you to enhance your visual communication skills. If you can make on a page, you can draw. Full stop, won't hear anything besides it. The only thing I will say is I have had, it's only been one comment, but I do listen to feedback asking for me to invest in a microphone because my Welsh voice was giving somebody mental exhaustion, I think the phrase was. And I did. I invested in a tiny little microphone. I am trying to incrementally improve the quality of these videos. However, 35 minutes into filming this, I realised I hadn't actually turned it on, and I'm really sorry, I just wasn't willing with the time in my schedule to sit down and do it all over again when the sound picked up on the camera still includes all of the fantastic tips and tricks. And also, this happened, where I'm going to put that on the video, and I wasn't aware I was filming my 5-head for a good 10 minutes. So I'm yet to edit it, but as I'm speaking this, of course it will be edited for your viewing pleasure. I'm just hoping future Alex can rectify it all in Premiere Pro. If you can stick around, you are going to pick up some fantastic tips and tricks, I promise you. It can really help you communicate the ideas you have about your dream wardrobe and start visually communicating them. It is worth noting we are about to start a brand new Create, Cut and Construct framework cycle over in the DPL Atelier Premium, which is my high-value, low-cost fashion membership. My members and I are going to be turning our attention to an occasion wear dress. So something a little bit more formal. Think wedding guest season on the horizon. And so between April, May and June, that is correct, isn't it? Between April, May and June, we are going to be designing, drafting and sewing up our very own ideas. And of course, this is a great place to start in visually communicating them. So why not check that out, come over and join us and see what we are all about. We're going to be covering corsetry skills, professional construction methods, and rendering chiffons and sheer fabrics, which would be a beautiful pairing to go with this tutorial today. So, as you know, I hate long-winded introductions. Shall we just jump into it? And I will catch you at the end with an exciting announcement. So we've got some examples here, and it's really important to know that whatever visual communication skill I am starting to do or implement, I always practice and warm up. I do not expect myself to churn out a final fashion illustration straight off the bat. My wrist takes a while to limber up, no innuendos needed there. My entire style begins to develop. And so the croquis you see here, I've not sketched this out from scratch time and time again. I practiced this morning with a pose I had in my mind. I did 4 or 5 variations of it. And once I was happy with the croquis, I traced that off. I put it in a folder or file template that I have, and I use it for purposes like this demonstration here. And I've then played around with different medium. So we have marker that I just limbered up and played around with, and we have pencil here as well. So it's just really important to give yourself a break. Anybody can visually communicate, but if you can make a mark on a page, then you can illustrate. And so it's just giving yourself a break, that it does take a little bit of time to limber up your wrist and limber up your hand, ready to improve your designs as you go on. So with this in mind, there are 3 main elements to visually communicating a lustrous, is that even a word, shiny kind of satin style fabric or silk style fabric. This can be applied in any medium. You just need to know your highlights, your midtones and your shadows. As long as you can start to study those, then you are good to go. And a really strong drawing exercise that I encourage all of my members to do inside the DPL Atelier is to drape a variety of fabrics from your fabric stash over the back of a chair, over the frame of a door or the edge of a door, over a table. Obviously drape it on the stand as well, drape it over yourself and take photos, and do an observational study of how various fabrics drape, because it really will inform how you render textiles in your visual communication and in your designs. Now, if you want to learn how to draw a croquis, there is a proportionate template you can apply to any croquis height. So a regular human body, us mere mortals, are about 7 heads high, and that is the size of the head here repeated 7 times. In a fashion illustration, we tend to elongate the pose. It looks more elegant. It gives us more space to communicate design details. But of course, what comes with that is the alien-esque physique. For many home sewists, if we are rendering designs on figures that don't even look like normal human beings, how are we meant to design clothes on figures that truly represent ourselves? So we teach all of this inside the DPL atelier. I teach how to do a 10 head high croquis, as I've got here. This is my personal preference. It's just how I like to visually communicate. I like how they look. I know my own proportions. I know how to design for people. So this doesn't really skew my creative process. But if you are designing for yourself, we also teach a 7 head high croquis masterclass inside the atelier, alongside how to draw for your figure. So I show an example of myself with scoliosis. I'm very asymmetrical. One of my waist sides comes in quite dramatically, the other side is quite straight, and I teach you how to draw a realistic croquis for your unique figure as well. So there's a variety of options: women's wear, men's wear, children's wear, and you can absolutely pick whichever template you want to work from. So again, that's inside the DPL atelier. We are just about to enter an occasion dress framework cycle. So perfect for what I'm about to teach here. We're going to be covering satins, but I will be going into rendering chiffons with my members, draping corsets, constructing corsets, and really professional techniques and methods to add something that is high quality to your home wardrobe. So as you can see here, I'm just going to kind of replicate it and come over here to draw a new design. So if we just sketch over our croquis, I'm just using a mechanical pencil. I love using these in my creative process because they always have a fine, sharp nib. You can get lead replacements to be a little bit more sustainable, but these are absolutely essential for pattern cutting. But I just, when I'm doing quick sketches and stuff like that, do transfer it over into my design work. So I'm just going to sketch on a basic design here. And let's say it's just a little off the shoulder moment, like so. Now, whenever you are casting shadows or trying to do tonal references and add depth to your drawing, it's so important to understand where your light source is coming from. The light source is coming from the left. Do a little sun. Just to bear that in mind. So you just want to make sure that your light source is consistent, because if the light is coming from the left, it's going to be casting a shadow to the right, to the opposite side. Vice versa, if it's straight on, then you need to be giving thought to that. The light will obviously be down at the center. If it's over to the right, it will be casting a shadow to the left. If the light source is down here, then the shadows are going to be the opposite side of that as well. So even with my hand here, with the light through the window, as you can see, my light source is hitting my hand here. A shadow is being cast to the right. So that's actually, for once, without my lighting set up, with natural daylight, that's actually a perfect example there. So it's just to bear that in mind. Now, what I like to do is start to think of my highlights, my midtones, and my shadows as shapes, and you're going to be able to almost see that hinted at here. And it really is a case of just breaking that down in a way that is easy to map out, to understand, and ultimately to render and colour in. And so the tightest part is going to be along the bust here and across the off the shoulder bit. So you can bet your bottom dollar that across the bust, the most prominent part of the upper half of the torso, upper half of the body, sorry, which is the torso, the most prominent part is going to catch the light, okay? So again, have practice draping this over, creating fabric shapes in a multitude of twists and turns, draping them over a variety of shapes. And the highlights are definitely going to hit just on the bust here. So I'm just going to sketch in a highlight along there like so. Now, if my light source is coming from here, then I'm going to end up having a highlight going down the side here. And I'm just going to draw that in as a shape. The leg coming forward, the foreshortening, is going to mean that this fabric here, going over the thigh, is going to curve over the thigh like this. If you draw on little arrows, it's going to curve over the thigh, hence the shape of the hemline here, and it's going to be pushed back. This leg behind her as she's walking is in the background. So you just need to give thought to the cylindrical effect of that, going around a three-dimensional body. And so this is going to be quite prominent. In fact, I'm going to elongate that shape there, and this is going to become a highlight. And I'm only doing it ever so lightly in pencil. Where this folds over, there's going to be a small highlight there. And then you want to give thought to your shadows and your midtones. So again, you can do that in shapes. But if I render this in a marker, what I want to do is I always want to swatch first. So you can see here I've swatched my greens for this here. I'm going to take my markers and I'm going to just make a note of them. I'm going to swatch them in numerical order just so that I keep track of what is what. 82, 84, 85, 73. So and from this swatch, I can see what complementary tones are going to make up my base colour and then my mid-tones and my shadows. So I think I'm going to pair together the first two I did, which was 73 and 82. And you can play around with layering them on top of one another to determine which becomes your shadow and which becomes your mid-tone. So this is just going to be my base colour. I'm going to put that all over. And then with thought to my shadows, bearing in mind my light source is coming from the left, I can then go back in. There's going to be a shadow cast underneath the bust. And then once I'm happy with that, I can go over my highlights with a white gel pen. Before plotting in my highlights, midtones and shadows as shapes. So just breaking that down. As the thigh is prominent and it is pulling forward, this is going to be a wider highlight. And that's not to say the entire right of this garment is cast in shadow. You're still going to have highlights to the right because we're working with a relatively iridescent or sheeny word, textile. So I'll plot my highlights on first. I'm then using pencil for this design, going to do a basic wash over the top. And again, this can be applied to watercolor. You just add more product and more more paint to the area to deepen the colors. But I'm just going to start. You can either color around the highlights, or I'm going to do all in one direction. I'm working with a pencil now, a coloring pencil. I'm going to make sure my line quality is all in the same direction. So I'm not doing this. I'm not colouring in like this. I'm going to keep it all in the same direction, very lightly back and forth. And I'm just going to put a colour over the entire base of this silhouette. And you'll see artists do this all the time. Now, I'm not professing to be an artist, but I do believe it's just to get rid of that overwhelm of staring at a blank piece of paper or staring at something that is empty and fresh and clean. Just putting a layer of colour over it just abolishes that first step. So you're going to see me put, and I'm making sure I'm doing this ever so lightly. Look how far back on the pencil I'm holding it. I'm doing this ever so lightly and just putting down a first layer of colour. Now this is going to be my highlight layer. They're not going to get any darker than that. And I can go over them with a white pencil, with a gel pen, with, as you're going to see from me, a little bit of chalk. I can go over that at the end just to really make them pop. But I'm just getting that first layer down. Once I'm happy with that, I'm then going to flip my pencil and I'm going to do almost a crosshatch effect and do the same thing but in the opposite direction. However, I'm going to miss out these shapes of highlight that I have drawn down there. So you'll see that the dress colour starts to darken, but the highlight shapes start to pop. So this is going to basically count as my mid-tones. And my hand, again, has come down further. The pressure's getting harder here, so the colour payoff is going to get deeper. And my hand's come down a little further. And I want to make sure that whatever I am doing, it's an even pressure. But I'm just going to apply that all over. And we do have a observational study masterclass regarding draped fabrics inside the atelier. So we have a look at how the folds of fabric, again, we're trying to render three-dimensional shapes here, let alone three-dimensional shapes on the figure. So there is a workshop inside the atelier that showcases that. We study draping fabric from different suspension points and how the light kind of bounces off that textile. And so notice this looks a little confused at the crotch. I did a crease line here because again, this model and this croquis is in motion, it's in movement, but my highlight shape was slightly different. So I'm gonna colour over the crease line, but still make sure I go around the highlight shape. And if you wanted to, you could get a kneadable eraser, make that a smaller shape, and I can just tap around my line quality so I don't have these sharp outlines. And I did just mention iridescent fabric a second ago. If you were doing iridescent, that kind of petrol-y, oily, multitude of colours, you're going to have like a little bit of a purple outline as well. So say, not really applicable here. If you were doing it on here and this was iridescent, you'd almost have like a yellow or a green where it's got that contrast to really mimic that metallic iridescent style textile. But again, this is the power of pulling out textiles from your stash and actually taking the time to sit and observe them, observe their properties, observe their colours, observe how they absorb the light, how they reflect the light. Satins and things like that will always have a nice little sheen to them just through the nature of how they're constructed. So we've got the highlights peeking through here. And again, the marker version is quite quick. It's quite clunky. It's 1, 2, 3, midtones, shadows, highlights. With pencil work, anytime you're doing pencil work, it is a case of patience and building colour, especially if you want it. This looks quite grainy right now, but the more you work it and the more you layer, it will become smoother. So now with the light coming from this direction again, I'm going to start adding in my shadows. And notice as I go over it, I do tend to cross hatch. So I'm going to flip back and I'm going to revert back to doing the opposite direction. Now I know it's going to be darker down here as she has stepped back. This is in terms of foreshortening. And again, we have tutorials on that inside the atelier as well. This is further back in our perspective from what we can see. Her foot here as she's walking is further back. And so I know that there is going to be a shadow back here. There will be shadows around the folds of these fabrics. And again, just because this is closest to the light source doesn't mean there's not going to be shadows cast here. The fabric is folding. And as you think of a cylindrical shape, like this, if the light source is hitting here, you're going to have almost a line of light down the cylinder. There's still going to be shadows cast here, just to highlight that this is three-dimensional. And obviously the majority of your shadows are going to come to this side. The light and the highlight is going to be plotted by here, but the shadow is going to come all the way round. And there is actually going to be a small slither of light, and I mean like minuscule. You really do have to look at fabric in detail. So I'm leaving a tiny bit by there, tiny bit of light by there, just to hint at that break in the fabric, at it rolling around the side. The light bounces off it from a variety of points. And now as I'm starting to build, I am starting to change my pencil motion to circular. I'm starting to smooth this out and get rid of that grainy texture that I initially laid down. This is also going to be influenced by the paper type that you are using. This is just a kind of rough sketchbook I have in my stash, but you might have medium weight paper, you might have watercolor paper. The texture of your paper is going to change the result of your medium. So you might be able to see here, actually, if I lift that up, the marker bleeds through in this. So if you're using marker, you're going to want a thicker weight paper, but just play around with it, just play around with the combinations. And then once you're happy with it, you can deepen or make your highlights more prominent with a little bit, deepen was not the right word then, with a little bit of chalk, or it could be a pencil. And I'm just going to go over these shapes to really make those highlights pop. And this could be a gel pen, like we've done over the marker. I mean, I could bring this over to the marker as well and layer that on top. That'll kind of make it all pop and become a bit deeper. And just highlight that like so. So, I hope that helps. That was a really quick rundown on how I do that. It's just about understanding the contouring of the body. If something is prominent and to the foreground, then the light is going to bounce off that more. If something is set back, we cast a darker shadow on it. And then of course it is all of the fullness, the areas of the body that are at their fullest, knowing your light source. A shadow will always be on the opposite side of the light source, and your midtones are just there to help you balance the whole thing. So let me know how you get on. Tag me on socials if you try this. And this is just a really beginner-friendly introduction. Anyone can mark make. You don't need to overcomplicate it. Highlights, midtones, shadows, and you'll be able to render something that looks relatively realistic, visually communicate your ideas, and start adding pieces to your wardrobe that you love. So there we have it. I hope that that was a high value little tutorial for you. I'm going to just say that your observational study skills of draping fabric will really help you out here, as will the understanding that the cornerstones of anything in terms of studying light are your highlights, your midtones, and your shadows. So just try and break it down into easy, less overwhelming steps, and it really will enhance your visual communication tenfold. Of course, play around with mediums. All of the tips I've just covered there can be applied to watercolor, to acrylic paint, to digital rendering on an iPad or Adobe software. Whatever you use, the principles still align. And with that out of the way, I actually have a really exciting invitation for you guys, because next week, Tuesday the 2nd, is April's 3-day design challenge. This is a beginner-friendly, high-energy, fast-paced, and yet easy-to-follow-along experience to help you unleash your inner fashion designer. You do not need any artistic skill, you do not need any experience, and you absolutely do not need to make a single thing. It's just me, you, pencil, piece of paper, and of course, the chance to win prizes. So over the course of 3 high-value workshops, I'm going to be teaching you how to answer a creative brief. We set a brand new design brief every quarter, and I design real-time alongside you. Think of it like an online project runway.
Make it work, make it work, make it work.
Except again, we don't sew anything, we don't actually make anything, unless you want to do that in 3 days, but I don't. I just want the quick fun. And we answer it together. So the first workshop is all about how to answer a creative brief. The second workshop is all about translating your ideas into garment design. I'm going to be teaching you how to curate a mood board, how to apply 3 cornerstones of that mood board to luxury fashion design. And then workshop number 3 is how to get the most out of your ideas, even if you've just sketched one design that you think is pretty naff. I'm going to give you the secret sauce in turning it into a professional, high-end, catwalk-ready idea. And then, of course, if you'd like to, no pressure from me, you can turn that idea into a reality inside the DPL Atelier. Whether you choose, I haven't even announced this publicly yet, but whether you choose to join us on our brand new standard tier, which is a really, really affordable option, even more so, it was already incredibly affordable, or the premium tier, where you get direct access to me. We focus on that 3-month framework cycle. And at the time of filming, of course, we're going to be making an occasion wear dress. I've got to think of the occasion, but April's 3-day design challenge is going to help me do that. So I really hope to see you there. Click the links down below to explore the digital pattern library universe. And again, if you do try any of the skills taught in this video, if you want to turn your hand to visual communication, to sketching, to enjoying all of those skills, then please tag me on socials at Digital Pattern Library. I'd love to see, I'd love to support you, and I'd love to follow your journey towards designing your dream wardrobe. For now, stay safe, keep creative. I'll catch you on the flip side.